They thunder out of turn number 4. They see the white flag. 1 to go. Blaney trying to hold off Kyle Busch and Daniel Suarez.
Rest assured, if either Busch or Suarez can get to the back bumper of Blaney, they're going to use their front bumper to get him out of the way. Ryan Blaney's lead is evaporating. Here comes Kyle Busch and Suarez.
A big-time push from Bubba Wallace to Kyle Busch. Wallace looks inside. Busch right up to Blaney's rear bumper. Crossover move. Kyle Busch up high. They're 3 wide for the lead. It's Daniel Suarez up high with Busch in the middle.
3 wide for the lead here in Atlanta, coming back to the start-finish line. Blaney down on the inside, and Ryan Blaney looks like he's going to pull it off by about 2 feet here. Now they're going, it's Daniel Suarez they're going to credit with the win.
It is close. NASCAR is going to have to take a hard look at it.
It's going to be Suarez, Mark, I think by maybe an inch, as he wins it by an eyelash and a literal 3 wide finish, and it is absolutely official.
An instant classic at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Daniel Suarez with the incredible 3 wide win at the finish. Marty Snider, Jeff Burton, Steve Letarte joining you here today. Jeff, what an incredible race, and you have to celebrate all that happened at Atlanta Motor Speedway, but certainly the finish. So kind of walk me through behind the wheel. What led to that kind of finish?
It was an incredible race from the time he dropped the green flag. It was absolutely nuts. I was there, watched it in person. I was tired when the race got over. Just from watching it. But from what happened on the last lap, I think it's really interesting. Blaney had the lead, appeared to be in control of the race. And I heard him say he thought he was in control of the race. Right here, what line do you block? There's really no momentum coming from either line. But right there, Bubba Wallace gets into the back of the 8 car, gets him going. That gives Kyle Busch a run. That gets the 2 guys side by side. That allows Suarez to get side by side. Wallace with a problem right there. That took the energy out of the second lane. And now it's just a drag race. There's no help coming from the second lane to anybody. So nobody got really much help. I think Cindric helped Suarez just a little bit, but not like you would have if Bubba hadn't had that problem. If Bubba gets into the corner in turn 3 and is able to hold the bottom, who knows what happens? Maybe it's 4 wide. That push right there got the 8 going. That's what started this 3 wide. And then from here, look at the pipes right at the 23. See right there, the fire come out of it? That's him out of the gas. And that killed the momentum of that second lane. And that had a lot to do with who won this race.
Well, the fans should celebrate it because what the drivers gave them, and they gave them a finish. Because, Blaney with a more aggressive block on the backstretch, maybe we have a wreck under the yellow and we try to figure out what won. I think what these drivers were asked to do is quite remarkable in the fact that they recover and deliver. And most of them were all in accidents throughout the day. The teams built their cars up. But then this is as hard a racing that you could do with 0 leaning on one another. I don't think there's any contact between the front 3 with everything on the line, which I think is great. Maybe a little there between the 8 and the 12. We didn't know what a drag race would look like at a 1.5 mile track. We know at Daytona that the guy on the inside kind of can shortcut the tri-oval and get there first. We know at Talladega, the line's way around the tri-oval, and it seems like the outside lane surges back ahead again. Well, now at Atlanta, I'm not sure what we learned other than hope the team behind you is pushing you, because I agree with Jeff. It all came down really to the effort from the cars in the second and the third row. But what a run really for all 3, and what a great run for Daniel Suarez. It's going to take a lot of pressure off after seeing what Ross Chastain was able to do the last couple of years, missing the playoff a year ago for Daniel Suarez to now basically lock himself into the playoffs. It has to be a lot of weight lifted for the driver of the 99.
So, Steve, before we dive too far into Suarez, I want to go back to something you said about you really celebrating what the drivers did. I mean, the racing was very intense all day long. You saw some of the best drivers in NASCAR literally spin out by themselves. I mean, I've never heard drivers talk about how much fun they had, yet how worried they were about getting into a wreck, or even as Todd Gilliland said, I've been worried about my life all day long. What do you think of as a crew chief when you look at the job the drivers did for all the laps at Atlanta?
Well, I think Marcus and SMI created something at Atlanta, which is really kind of a risk versus reward. And that's from both behind the wheel and from on top of the pit box. These cars could easily be set up to run around here wide open, no problem. But then you're just not fast enough. So that is the next guy kind of daringly takes downforce off and daringly reduces drag in his race car. You have to chase him. And that's what we saw, was this razor's edge of speed versus control. And then we had these drivers that had to climb into the cockpit and try to control this fighter jet basically for 400 miles on the edge of control. It was quite amazing, because the problem is in this world of engineering and simulation, Jeff, right? We can sim the setups all you want, but I think the two things that are impossible to sim are restarts and traffic. And what Atlanta delivered was 400 miles of traffic. You know, the leader didn't spit out of the zone. It was somebody back in row 3, 4, 5, an aero situation. We talk about experience. It's purely experience. I don't think you get good at that style of racing without just being in the mix week in and week out, year in and year out.
Throw ordinary out of the language in regard to what we saw on Sunday. That is not ordinary. That is extraordinary. And, you know, watching it in person, I don't know that the casual fan can appreciate how hard it is what the drivers did on Sunday. By the way, 2 Sundays back to back. It is amazing that they were able to operate for that long. I know some drivers made some mistakes. I know, Marty, to your point, some guys spun out all by themselves. That's because you are being asked to do things that are extraordinary. And when you do that, you're going to make mistakes. And it went on lap after lap, hour after hour. It wasn't a little sprint race. This thing that had a few moments of glorious. It was the entire race. Whether it was a race to be the first car lap down, whether it was a race for the lead, whether it was a race to be the guy that found a way to make it 3 wide. I watched Denny Hamlin do some things that were extraordinary, absolutely amazing in the middle of the corner, making it 3 wide, putting drivers in unbelievable situations. They had to, and they learned from that. And they started making it 3 wide. They started blocking those runs. It was a game of chess in a situation where if you didn't do it right, you got hurt. And it was amazing to watch them. And I think the drivers, I walked down pit road when the race was over. They looked like they'd run 1,000 miles. I mean, they were worn out. It wasn't from the conditions. It wasn't hot. It was a cool day. It was from the emotional stress of it. And I just don't think we can celebrate enough what the drivers did on Sunday.
Marty, I'm a numbers nerd, and you know it. So I had to do the number, right? 0.003 seconds at about 177 miles an hour. That's 9 or 10 inches. More impressively, third place was 0.007. That's under 2 feet. That's 21 or 22 inches. So this freeze, right? This 3 wide freeze, you're talking under 1 foot between Blaney and Suarez, under 2 feet between Suarez and Kyle Busch, right? I mean, it's basically one checkered square is the difference after 400 miles of racing at 175 to 180 miles an hour.
And Steve, you know, I just talked about it being chess. So if you're chess, if you are Kyle Busch or you are Ryan Blaney, you're going back playing this over in your mind. Where was 1 foot? Where was 2 feet? Over a 1.5 mile lap. How could I have gained that rather than losing it? Right? And that's maddening. That will make you not sleep at night. I lost a race because of this over a mile. And it was there. Somewhere there was a 2 feet. There was 1.5 feet. There was out there somewhere for you to gain. But it's easy in reverse. It's easy to go back and say, well, I could have done this. And that's what they're doing. Those 2 guys are just sitting there analyzing themselves to death. What could I have done different to win this race by that amount? And it is amazing that that's what we watched and the sleepless nights that will create.
Well, Jeff, Steve touched on it earlier. Daniel Suarez gets the win. I don't think there's a way to quantify how much this means to him. I mean, clearly was on the hot seat coming into the year. You know, Trackhouse has hired Shane Van Gisbergen. They've hired Zane Smith. Does this buy him any sort of security, you think, moving forward?
Look, I don't buy that Daniel Suarez is on the hot seat.
Okay.
I think Justin Marks is a believer in Daniel Suarez. I think Justin Marks is trying to figure out how to have more race teams. Right? I don't think that Justin Marks is saying, well, who's going to replace Daniel Suarez? Like, Daniel Suarez is he's a really good race car driver that's still young, that still can develop into somebody that will contend on a weekly basis. I believe that Daniel is putting more pressure on him than Justin is. And that's okay. That's what we do. It's professional sports. That's what you should do. If you're a professional athlete, you should worry about your job every day because That's motivation. That makes you better, because I promise you somebody's working harder than you. So I think Daniel is putting that pressure on him. I don't think that's coming from Justin. I think it's just natural pressure. But it allows Daniel to take a breath. It allows Daniel to say, all right, I can do this. Unless something extraordinary happens, I'm in the playoffs. Now I can focus on how do we, and by the way, a new crew chief combination, new driver crew chief combination. We now can work with a little less pressure. And I think that could help Daniel be a better race car driver and help him develop, rather than taking the next 24 races, Steve, and saying, oh my God, I have to do these things. They now get to say, we need to do these things versus we have to do these things. That's a different psychological approach to when you're going to the next few races.
He's given some great content to the marketing machine of Trackhouse, right? They're a marketing machine. They do things very differently with Pitbull, with their association and Superbikes. You know, you mentioned bringing over Shane Van Gisbergen. So they are definitely doing things different than the fold. And I think all Daniel did right there, to Jeff's point about his relationship and his taking a breath, is all true. But he's also given his team, his company, his marketing machine of Trackhouse Racing just one more great thing to put in the highlight reel to go do what they're doing, which, you know, where every dollar you raise, you go a little faster. So this will help Trackhouse just become even more sustainable than they already are, right? I mean, part of the marketing machine is you have to back it up. And I think they have both done it at times. This is just kind of one more thing you can put on the highlight reel.
Hey, that's a great point, Steve. So think about Trackhouse and Justin and what he's trying to build, and what he has to sell is Ross Chastain at Martinsville doing what no one thought could be done.
Yeah.
And then a record finish with Daniel. I mean, those are two of the most memorable finishes, will be one of the most memorable finishes in the history of NASCAR. And Justin Marks and that incredible marketing team, they will use that to their advantage.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jeff. You know, Steve, by the way, before we leave Atlanta will be the first race of the playoffs. So, you know, you never expect the second closest finish in NASCAR history, but is that kind of racing what the Cup Series can expect when we go back there to start the playoffs in September?
I mean, the last two races have looked just that way. The finishes might have been a little bit different, but overall, what the 400-mile event looked like was exactly that. So I don't think it would change at all in the playoffs. So that's on every competitor's mind. So the ones that kind of get into the playoffs without a lot of momentum, they're going to look at Atlanta as the opportunity that they can kind of strike gold in advance. For those that feel like they're contenders to go deep into the playoffs, it makes the regular season only more important to just fill that bucket of playoff points. Either way, Atlanta looming out there in the distance in the playoffs is a real challenge, concern, and it is frightening to these teams because it is, as Jeff put it, anything but ordinary.
Hi, I'm Parker Kligerman. For more access like this from Pit Road, be sure to click and subscribe to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel.